I want to make sure everybody can hear me. If you can hear me on TikTok, let me know. Grand Rising, everybody. How you doing? I got to figure out how we can get guests up here. I know I can get guests up here for Facebook and YouTube. That one definitely works. Getting guests on here for TikTok is going to be a whole nother thing. But we're going to figure this. We're going to figure it out. We're going to figure it out. Yep. Okay. The volume is working on both of them. This one microphone is going to work for everybody. So that's good. Good. So we're good to go as far as the microphone is concerned. Now we just got to figure out how to make this goddamn on. I got the prompt up on Facebook and YouTube. How can I now get the prompt up for TikTok is the problem. I went based on the information that it told me, and I see the prompt. I see where I put it. The prompt is biblical history is 99% false. 99% false. People on TikTok, if you can see, I know when I looked at it, I couldn't see it, but if you can see it, let me know. But I don't see it at all. Let me try that again. Live info is under review. I swear to Bob, me and TikTok is gonna go fight each other. We're gonna fight. It's easy to get a prompt up on my phone using TikTok, but not so much on here. On this live, I only got to do this live one more time on TikTok, and then I can do it on an OBS, and everybody be working together. So the conversation today, like I said earlier, is going to be about the fact that, what's up, people? What's up, Kevin? Is the fact that there is absolutely zero historical evidence. Well, not zero. There's 99% of the information that is claimed in the Bible to be historical is simply false. You can't prove it. There's no proof of it. And hopefully we'll have a conversation today. I got about 2 hours. This is 1:30 Central Time right now. Probably go to about 3:30. And then 3:30, 4 o'clock. Then we're out of here for today. I looked up how to get this prompt up. I can't even get the multi-guest thing up for this damn TikTok. But no matter what story we look at in the Bible, now, can you find certain things that the Bible says historically that are valid? Sure. Can you find that the city of Jerusalem exists? Yes. Can you find that certain kings, Hezekiah, Zedekiah, most likely existed? But not much beyond a few things like that. That's why I put 99% of it is historically inaccurate. The whole Jesus narrative. The Jesus of the Bible never existed. Never, ever existed. There is absolutely zero proof that there was ever a Jesus that the Bible proclaims Jesus to be. The miracle, magic wanderer, Jesus, and that the Jesus story is most likely a compilation of different writings concerning what Josephus write about different Yeshua types, different people who were proclaiming to be the Messiah. There are stories like Apollonius of Tyana that are very similar to the Jesus story. I thought that was debatable. No, 99% of it is historically inaccurate. 99% of what you see in the Bible is historically inaccurate. Especially, the minor events, of course, those can just be fictional. There's no way to prove those. Like the story of Judges 19, you can't show that in any way. You can't even show the war that supposedly happened in Judges 19 or 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. You can't see any of that. None of those things happen. I'm trying to do multi-guess where people can come up. I know that someone did it before. They clicked on something at the bottom that allowed them to be a guest on TikTok, but then it went away. But I mean, then it popped up at the end of the show. But when it comes to things like the flood, never happened. The Exodus never happened. These major stories that would have had so many would have affected so many other people. Those are the things that never happened. Let me say. I thought it was it. No, I mean, as far as Jesus, not him being God, but maybe he was a charismatic rabbi or etc. That is what many modern day scholars try to say, who are afraid to just say it outright. There's that there probably was and some itinerant preacher who was going around charismatic, talking to people, convincing people to start a new religion and so on and so forth. But the problem with that is that is not the biblical Jesus. Just because you have somebody that the story may be based off of doesn't necessarily make the historical part true. I mean, it make him a historical character. Now, with the Jesus character, there's a little bit different. So let me rephrase that. With the Jesus character is different from many other legendized characters, right? So Johnny Appleseed, for instance, there was a man named Johnny who was walking, who planted some apple orchards. He was never walking around barefoot. He never made it past Ohio, so he didn't make it all the way to Washington State. But the Jesus character is problematic because you cannot identify not one individual, but you can identify multiple people that the story could have been created from. So when you have multiple people, you can't necessarily say there was a historical character who was walking around preaching, right? And even to use the term rabbi, rabbinical Judaism didn't start until after the temple was destroyed. So with the temple, so Jesus couldn't have been around in the early first century calling himself rabbi because the temple hadn't been destroyed yet, and the rabbis hadn't been established. Now, there were a few sects of people in around 50, 40 who used the term rabbi, a few, but very few, not widespread enough for some charismatic preacher who's supposed to know God is supposed to walk around calling himself rabbi, right? So it's still got some problems. But the fact that it wouldn't be one character, and that's the part that a lot of them say that is, I find irritating, is that they say that there was probably a person that is based off of. No, it will be multiple people. There are so many different variations and stories and different people. Josephus alone mentions at least 4, some people say up to 46 different people who were claiming to be the Messiah, or whose name was Yeshua and they were a high priest, right? Thank you. Appreciate that. I like my hat too. Yeah, you just found out that rabbis have to be married. That's another thing. Rabbis, when the rabbinical Judaism started, a rabbi had to be a married person. In their mindset, they were thinking that how can you advise married people if you've never been married? And they wanted you to be the husband of one wife. So that wasn't going to work. Okay. So if I miss y'all comments, I can do that. All right. Now, like I said, the prompt is not on TikTok. At least I can't see it because I don't know what I'm doing as far as TikTok Live. But we're going to figure it out. I got one more to do on TikTok Live before I can switch over to OBS. Light Free over on YouTube said that the flood happened, yet provides no proof whatsoever that the flood happened. And there is actually more archaeological and geological proof that the flood never happened. So the flood could have never happened. There's not enough water on the earth, under the earth, above the earth in order to flood the entire planet. Right? There's not enough water. It just can't happen. The highest mountain peak would be Mount Everest. There's not enough air at the top, at that elevation, for anything to breathe, let alone set a fire, let alone float. Any water at that level is ice, is completely iced over. Oh, thank you for following me on Facebook as well. I appreciate that. But you can't have a floating boat at Mount Everest height. So how can a boat float at that level? How can they? It wouldn't work. They would all be encased in ice. This is funny to me. This comment over here on YouTube, I got to put this one up because it's funny to me. He's Light Free said, "I'm going to trust God over a human. No offense. I'm not offended at all, but thank you for having the consideration to say that." But so you trust a being that you've never met, never heard of, never spoken to, have never demonstrated itself to be in existence, that the only application of this being is from a book that was written 2,000 years ago, written over a few hundred years time frame, written by different people at different time frames of history with different cultures, all smashed together with a lot of contradictions. And every time people say that God told me, there's never any proof of it. And you hear yourself talking to yourself, and that's how you say that you believe in God. What does loving my mom has to do with any of that? That makes no sense. That comment is ludicrous. The fact of the matter is, I can call my mother up right now, see how she's doing, talk to her. You know, I have physical applications with my mother where I've touched her, I've hugged her. Yeah. So that whole I trust God, you're just trusting what people have told you, and you're just trusting yourself. That's it. That's it. That's it. Nothing else. A man says, is it really true, sorry, that the apostles affirm Paul and his teachings? I've been hearing this is actually true. Well, whoever wrote Luke and some of the pseudographical epistles, they claim that. But we have nothing from any apostle that actually says that they knew Paul. When you read the four gospels, none of them mention Paul. There is no gospel of Peter. There's no gospel of any of James and all of those guys. None of them ever affirm Paul. This is just the writer of Luke and other followers of Paul that claim the apostles approved of Paul. So that would be like me saying that, oh, Jesse Jackson approved me of being a civil rights leader. Jesse's gone. There's no way to prove it. He can't speak against it. I can say whatever I want to say. And then I can have other followers of mine say that, oh, yeah. I was there. It's kind of like Joseph Smith when he said he found those golden tablets. And then a couple of his followers like, yeah, he did find them. And yet no one has ever seen the golden tablets. So only if you believe the Bible would you say that. Yeah, I got to keep the reading glasses on. Would you make that statement? Otherwise, that statement is invalid. That's just going to be simply based on what somebody believed. Right. And Jim is saying Peter did mention Paul. I'm not a Paul's biggest fan, but so like I said, a pseudographical book written claiming to be Peter is claiming that. So when the book itself claims it, that doesn't make it true. And so I agree that the Bible itself claims that the apostles approved of Paul, but there's no proof of who wrote those or that those things are true. There's absolutely no proof that that Paul met any of the apostles. Hell, there's not even proof that Paul existed or Peter or John, Mark, Luke, that any of those guys existed. So the book itself saying it means absolutely nothing. Oh, hey, Ed Crunchme. Since Ed Crunchme is on here, and of course, we know that my lives last about as long as my cigar. Let me get the cigar ready so that I can make sure that Ed Crunchme get that smoke. Now, I don't know what Ed Crunchme is saying by prove it. God damn, boy, y'all typing. There's a lot going on over here. on that damn TikTok. That scroll, just keep on scrolling. So trying to prove that you're, see, it is not, one, I can prove and demonstrate that the flood never happened, that Exodus never happened, that there is no Jesus, right? There's nothing outside of the Gospels that talks about a Paul. So the Bible itself can't be the proof of its own claims. That would be like Spider-Man, the comic book Spider-Man, being the proof of the claim that Spider-Man exists. And y'all know I'm a big Marvel fan, so I use Marvel a lot. So you can't say, oh, the Bible says, and that's your proof. You have to have other proof. You have to have some pottery, corn, statues, some archaeology, that type of archaeology to demonstrate that these people existed. Philo of Alexandria was someone who was walking around, pretty much running Alexandria, Egypt, as a Hellenistic Jew for the Roman Empire, wrote a lot about the Jewish people during early first century, yet he never mentions Paul. He never mentions any of the disciples. He never mentions Jesus. Josephus never mentions any of them as well. Josephus actually talks about multiple people with the popular name of Yeshua, but never mentions the Yeshua of the Bible and his followers. So none of these people who are outside of the realm of what you find in the Bible ever mention any of those people. At least if you had some historian, if wrote about it, you'd have it. Like any of the early first century historians, but we have none of them. Not one. Let me piss off Ed Crunch me. I love when people complain about my cigars as if my cigars got anything to do with the information that's being passed. It's so funny to me. All right. So the way to, and one of the main ways you want to prove these things is by having somebody else write about them. It's kind of like the Tao, Lao Tzu. As much as I love reading the Tao, and I love the information that the Tao provides, we have absolutely no proof that Lao Tzu actually existed. Lao Tzu could be a fictional character. Probably is a fictional character. Probably was a Buddhist monk who was leaving Buddhism and leaving civilization and to go live up in the mountains by his damn self because he was tired of all these humans. Or he just may have wanted just, I want to get into my full, get in the flow of the energy of the way. But we have no idea of Lao Tzu ever existing, in the same way that we have no idea of any of the apostles, any of the disciples. No Paul. Paul is not even the one who claims that he had his issue, that he met Jesus on the road to Damascus. That was all told by the writer of Luke. So there's zero demonstration that any of these people existed. I mean, people come on here and they're claiming that yes it is, but you don't provide anything. So let me explain what I mean, James. So James over on, and we're on Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube, by the way, for people. Dang it, I messed it up. James said that you said that proof would be if someone else wrote about it. Each book of the Bible is written by a different person. Okay, you misunderstand what I mean by when I say that. And first, I said it would be at least more beneficial. I'm not claiming that to be 100% proof, but at least if you had someone outside of the Bible writing about it, and I understand what you're saying. The Bible was written by multiple authors through different time frames. But if we had somebody outside of the belief system who actually believed, who actually wrote about these people, like one of the ways we know Marcionism existed is because people outside of Marcionism wrote about Marcionism, right? So there was some type of religion based on Marcion, who is probably the writer of Luke, but there, because he had his own gospel, the Gospel of Marcion, and it is eerily similar to Luke, just longer. But that would at least help the cause. I'm not saying that would be 100% proof. It would help the cause. You might say, okay, if Philo had wrote about Paul going around writing letters that he was sent to Rome as a prisoner and so on and so forth, then we would at least say, okay, there probably was this guy named Paul who was pushing this religion and was called to Rome to be tried, and was, sending letters, was a traveling minister and sending out these letters to these different Christian churches that had popped up in mid to late first century. At least we would be able to say Paul probably existed. And I say probably existed at that point, right? We still wouldn't have definitive proof, but probably did. Just like the same way we can say that there were many people running around first century BCE, first century CE, claiming to be the Jewish Messiah. A whole bunch of them. And that's only and when you got when you got people saying that, we know it. And then you got Roman records that demonstrate that a lot of those people were jailed or beaten or killed. So there's collaborative information that would demonstrate that many people were walking around claiming to be the Jewish Messiah in first century. And with Yeshua being a popular name, it's a safe bet that many of them would have been named Yeshua. So that's not, but that's proof that that type of event was happening. Those type of was the mentality, but it's not proof of the biblical Jesus. Oh yeah, I can't stand when those people be acting extra because you're smoking a cigar in a place where you can't smoke and be like, they get on my nerves. Oh, I like little Rupert Thomason claiming it doesn't mean that you are. No, I'm not claiming it. What I'm talking about is actual what we know. Is what we know. We know what Josephus wrote. We know what Philo and many other first century authors did not write. We know that the first writers to talk about Christians weren't until the second century, when you got people like Tacitus and Suetonius and all of them. They were writing about Christians, or about what people believed, not validating that the people in question live. Also, the major philosophers during Jesus' time, Lucius, Philo, Quintius, etc., never mentioned. Exactly. Deutler, none of them ever mentioned him. And if that, and see, here's the thing: Jewish uprising was a big problem in first century. Actually, first century, second century, and somewhat still in the third century. That was a big old problem in the Roman Empire, especially because a lot of it centered around major trading posts. It was in Rome, it was in the Levant, in Jerusalem, in Alexandria. So if there was another dude in the Jewish community who was starting problems, causing infighting, that would have been something that was majorly dealt with. This is one of the reasons why, which emperor was it? I want to say Domitian. He kicked the Jews out of Rome. Was it Domitian or was it? It wasn't Titus. I think his name might have started with a T. But there was a Roman emperor who was like, all the philosophers and all the Jews, get the hell out of Rome because y'all causing problems, right? So this was a big problem with the Roman Empire. So Jesus, if he actually existed and was performing miracles, should have been mentioned. He wasn't. Apollonius of Tyrann of Tyana was mentioned, which is an interesting thing that Apollonius would have been mentioned and still being mentioned 200 years later. Right? So you had other people that was walking around believed to be the son of God at that time frame. No, it wasn't Claudius. Claudius was that's too early to have kicked out. I don't know if Claudius kicked out the Jews. I think that's too early. What? Shit. Let me see. This is the beauty of not having this on my phone. What Roman emperor kicked out philosophers and Jews out of Rome? Oh, no. Emperor Claudius did it in 41. My bad. You right. Emperor Claudius did it. I could have sworn somebody did it later on as well. Vespasian banished philosophers. Domitian did do it. Yeah. Domitian did it as well. So Claudius did it, and then Domitian did it. So this shows that, like, the Jewish people in the Roman Empire were problematic for multiple centuries. So you got Claudius doing it, you got Domitian doing it. And this wasn't because they were fearful of what they was talking about. It was because their type of speech created rebellions. And so because of those rebellions, the Roman Empire is like, we got to hold things tight, and they messing up our money. So these people, Christians weren't even on the map yet during Claudius's time, as far as being a problem. You don't really see them as a problem until you get into late 1st century, early 2nd century. And then you even have one empress who pushes the publication of Apollonius of Tyana to combat Christianity because it was problematic. So I'm still trying to figure out how to get the guest thing up for TikTok. It's driving me crazy. I know Miss Fifi figured it out last time. Yeah, Apollonius of Tyana was known as a wandering preacher out of Turkey who was performing miracles. He was miraculously born from a god with a human woman. Walked around preaching, had disciples, healed the sick, resurrected a woman, cast out demons, and vanished, and then was seen again. So resurrected, and is proclaimed as the Son of God. And Apollonius was born around 15 CE and died around, they estimate his death was around 100 CE. Rupert, I'll stick with whatever subject matter I damn well please. So don't try to tell me what to do here, sir. With all due respect, you don't rule this show, so don't try to tell me how to run it. But I follow you on my other accounts. I could have sworn I seen you live with guests. Yes. So what's going on, Doodler, is that in order to utilize the OBS so I can have everybody on one platform, I have to use TikTok Live Studios. And instead of my phone, when I use my phone, it's easy for me to click on the thing for guests to come up. On here, I don't see, it says multi-guest. I click on it, but it doesn't allow for multi-guest. So I don't do it. Now, Miss Fifi figured out how to come on here last time I was live on TikTok Studio. I only got to do one more TikTok Studio live, and then I can use the OBS system. So Casey Snow says, so you telling me that if Adam never ate from the forbidden tree, that no one would of trip and fail and fall, possibly enduring themselves crushed as snail. Oh, I think he's talking to somebody else. Oh. Yeah, but that story is also kind of ridiculous. Like, it's all because of Adam and Eve, and if Adam and Eve hadn't, I gotta turn this. This might be a little bit louder, but I need more air. It's a little hot here in Texas. So the Adam and Eve story is like one of the biggest false stories that I can't even imagine that young earth creationists are still trying to push this narrative. Right? The fact that they believe that the earth was created 6,000 plus years ago is ridiculous. That the reason why women experience child pain in childbirth is because they disobeyed this God, and that some talking snake convinced them to eat from this tree. That I find to be one of the more ridiculous stories in the Bible, especially when we can easily demonstrate that the earth is way or older, incredibly way older than what biblical so-called scholars say that it is. You know, when you got your Ken Hams and people like that out there who are saying that, oh yeah, the earth was created in 4004 based on who begat who and how old who was when they begat that person, that the Garden of Eden was established at that time frame. Hell, we know that there were humans in the Americas prior to 4004 BCE. And humans in the Americas is one of the last places that humans civilized. So we already know that humans were in Africa. Then the Homo sapien was in Africa, migrated up into the Middle East, up throughout Asia, up throughout Europe, crossed over to India, went to Japan and the Pacific Islands and migrated to the Americas thousands of years before this whole the whole Adam's narrative started. And yet they still hold on to it. Radiometric dating demonstrates, I think one of the footprints in Utah is like Utah, New Mexico, one of those two. It's like 25,000 years old. Those footprints that were made 25,000 years ago. So how can Adam and Eve have only been created 6,000 years ago? Right. And like God used the book to has proof when most of the population couldn't read or write. Exactly. That just sounds like somebody said that, you know what? I have a methodology to control the people, and they won't be able to check me on it because they can't read, they can't write. And unless you got a military behind you, you're not going to be able to stop me from doing what I'm doing. So it doesn't work. But in that Genesis story, when it talks about the rivers don't even flow the way that the Genesis story says that the rivers flow. It says that out of the Garden of Eden flowed the Euphrates and the Tigris, the Pison and the Aegean. Fact of the matter is, the Tigris and Euphrates flow south. The Euphrates River begins in the mountains of Turkey, right? So if the river begins in the mountains of Turkey and they're caused by the snowfall on top of the mountain, and then the tributaries feed in, and the Euphrates River begins in Turkey and flow down through Syria and down through Iraq, and ultimately ending up in what we call the Persian Gulf today. How in the hell can the Garden of Eden be where it exists and the Tigris River begins in a wholly different place? You see how like life science just demonstrates that the book is wrong, right? Just science in itself. The Bible don't say that. Okay, so Jim, if you're going to take that line of thought, saying that, well, the Bible doesn't say it, then it's not real. Then there are many things that in the Christian doctrine, the Bible doesn't say explicitly, 100%, but y'all run with it. But you don't have to always that. All you got to do is do some critical thinking. The Bible does do this person had this person, and this is how old they were when they had this person. And it does that all the way back to Adam. You can go from Joseph all the way back to Adam. And the thing about it is, it goes back to 4004. I think it was a Christian scholar back in his somewhere between the 16 and 1800s. I think he was in the 1600s. I think his name was something Henry. He did that first calculation, and that's where the 6,000 years stem from. But any person can go and do that. So, saying the Bible doesn't expressly say something doesn't necessarily validate the point. Oh my gosh, here go one of those. I know you're joking, Eddie. Eddie said, no, it's the Mississippi River, I think, maybe. Oh, man. So the Mississippi River, I love when those people come, they try to say that the Mississippi River is actually the Nile River, or some say it's the Nile, some say it's the Euphrates. They can't even make up their mind. But it does. It only follows one line. But that one line goes back to Adam, Jim. That's the problem. The one line goes back to Adam, who is supposed to be the first man. So there's no way around it, Jim. According to the Bible, Adam and Eve were created around 4004 BCE. There's no way around it. That's what the Bible says. That's how it claims it. That's how it claims it. I know you want it to be different. You may want it to be different. I don't know, but that's what it does. Because the fact of the matter is, even before I knew that this other guy back in the day had calculated that, when I was in my 20s, I had calculated it myself, of going back and seeing how old was this person when they had this person, and then that person who had that person, how old was they when they were born. And I kept going back to Adam, and you get 4004 BCE, roughly, as the time frame of the creation of Adam and Eve. And according to the Bible, they were the first man and first woman. According to Genesis 2, they were the first man and first woman. So, and I like when they say, no, it doesn't, without looking it up themselves, without doing the research themselves. Just, no, it doesn't. It doesn't fit my narrative. So, no, it doesn't. You see, I don't think people listen when I talk. I don't think they listen, because he says I'm talking about unknowns. Everything I just expressed about the whole Garden of Eden thing is not an unknown. It's easily known and known. It's not an unknown to be able to look who begat who. That is so funny. Right, the Garden of Eden wasn't in Africa where they found the Y chromosome Adam or the mitochondrial Eve. Yeah, the Garden of Eden, just like the people with the Mississippi River is the Euphrates or the Nile. And I actually did a video where I showed me following the Mississippi River, and at no point did the Mississippi River begin and where the Mississippi River begins, 4 rivers do not come out of that. So it's damn sure not the Euphrates. Damn sure not the Euphrates. And one of the reasons why people say that the Mississippi is the Nile, because the Mississippian culture is what we call the Native Americans who was living along the Mississippi. They built their mounds, which are similar to pyramids. And so they say, oh, that must have been Egypt then. That must have been Egypt. Now, I have heard this one of those statement, and let me tell you where this one comes from. So Michael Jackson said, on the outside of the garden is where the primitive hominids roamed. Now, you can get this from two different thought processes. Thought process number one, based on the Bible, is that in Genesis chapter 1, where it talks about God created man and woman, told them to be fruitful and multiply and have dominion over the earth, that those were a different creation than from the Adam and Eve creation in the garden. That the Adam and Eve creation was a separate creation of creating the line that will become the Israelite people. The only problem with that is that it is well documented that those are just two different creation stories, one by the northern Israelite tribes and the other one by the southern Judahite tribes. And when they were being put together by Josiah in and around the early 600s BCE, they just smashed them together. And that's why those two narratives have issues, because you have Moses, Moses supposedly writing this is saying that there are the people who live in tents and the people who play musical instruments are the descendants of Cain. So it has its own contradictions within it. Now, the other way that you could get to that point is if you read the Anunnaki story. And according to the Anunnaki story, Enlil, Enki, Ninhursag, Anu got together to speed up man's genome to create the Homo sapien. And the Homo sapien was working inside an enclosure in Eden to manage all the slave labor that they had of the other people. So those are the two places that you can get that idea from. But from the biblical sense, it strictly is just you can make the claim about those being two separate creations, but in truth, they are two separate creations, but they are two separate creations by two different groups of Israelites, and then Josiah put them together and try to make them fit as one creation. But of course, he created a problem when doing so. He should have gotten rid of one. Should have just left one of them out. The problem was Genesis 2 gives you that line for the Israelites. Genesis 1 doesn't do that. But Genesis 2 doesn't give you how the earth was created the same in the same detail as Genesis 1 does. So we need both of them, and we're going to force them to reconcile. But of course, as we get back then, they were under these dictatorships, these kingships. And so if the king said this is what it means, then the people just said, okay. We don't necessarily live under that anymore, and we haven't for a long time. And so people now can research information for themselves and without facing, getting killed by the king or getting killed by the church. Remember, a lot of scientific advancements were made by people who believed in Christianity, but because it went against what the religion taught, they were either found as heretics, they were murdered. Galileo's daughter was threatened, and that's why he then recanted. But they were pissed off at him because his findings went against what the church taught, that the earth was the center of the universe. So we can see in throughout time how government and political control has determined what the people are going to believe. So, people are sheep, and then people are afraid of powers that can take their life away. Yes, the science shows that only Africans have the least amount of Neanderthal DNA. This is true because, and most scientists in recent time frames have come more to the realization that Homo sapiens and Neanderthals developed on separate branches. And once the Homo sapien came into Europe, they bred out the Neanderthal for the most part. The same thing with the Desovians, but they've also found that Desovians and Neanderthals also bred with one another as well, which are just different branches off of the tree. And Homo sapiens became the dominant version off that tree. Now, it doesn't make one person who is walking around today better than the next person. Let me be clear about that. Because in the same way that Homo sapiens developed society and tribes and cultures, the Neanderthals also developed tribes and cultures, art, things of that nature. So did the Denisovans. So it doesn't make one better than the other. It's just we are human society today is just more Homo sapien than anything else. So I don't want to sign off on that and come off as if I'm saying that one group of people is better than another group of people. You're never gonna hear me say that. Oh, you may not be Christian, Jim. I already know that you've told me before that you're not necessarily Christian, and that's fine. But it's not about you being Christian or not Christian. It's about what the information says and what critical thinking does. Critical thinking says that how you can determine, and this is how the younger creationists have determined the age of the earth. If you go against that, I'm gonna talk about it. So Michael Jackson, I got to ask you a question. Oh man, I want to get somebody up here and talk to him. I posted the link on YouTube and Facebook. Miss Fifi won't tell me how she did it on. She ain't told me yet how she did it on TikTok. The God destroyed many humans in the garden because they were being loud and mating loud while he was trying to study, and he had his soldiers take care of them. Mixing a little bit of that Enlil story in there. If you don't know, the Anunnaki story says that the reason why Enlil allowed for the earth to be flooded, he didn't flood it himself, but he allowed for the earth to be flooded, was because humans were too loud. He couldn't sleep. So he flooded the whole planet. No, he did flood it. I said he flooded it, according to the story. But is that what, I can't remember if that was Utnapishtim or Atrahasis, but then one of them was allowed to survive because Enki came and told him what was going to happen and all that sort of thing. But yeah, I thought that was a crazy story that humans were too loud, and so Enki was like, "Kill them bastards." It might have been Zoroaster. Exactly, boss lady. He may not be Christian, but his views and thoughts do align with Christian belief. So he might well call himself a Christian. That's it. Said, call me crazy, but I believe 100% of the Anunnaki because it makes way more sense. Plus, there's actual artifacts to back it up. There's artifacts to back up that people believed in the Anunnaki. I can't necessarily say that there's artifacts that the Anunnaki existed, but people certainly believed in the Anunnaki. The problem with a lot of the artifacts for the Anunnaki were created supposedly thousands of years after the so-called events, similar to the Bible and other narratives. But certainly people did believe that Marduk existed, that Enlil and Enki existed, and so on and so forth. What is your YouTube name? If you search Coach Renz, O-R-E-N-Z, Coach R-E-N-Z 33 on YouTube, my page should come up. The name of the page is Deconstructing Christianity, but it's Coach Renz 33 is the easier way to search it and find it. But there are the Anunnaki story. Look, I ain't gonna lie to you. There was a time frame where I thought the same way. I mean, I still think the same way, that the Anunnaki story is more believable than the Christian story. The Anunnaki story does have many problems as well, but the fact of the matter is, it's just as mythical as the Bible. No. Now I'm gonna have to look it back up, but I'm pretty sure this is wrong. Michael Jackson said that the Anunnaki planet Nibiru was discovered by NASA and confirmed it as to be a planet X. So evidence. There was a time frame where NASA was claiming that there may have been a planet X, but I don't think anything definitive ever came out of that. Let me check. Was the planet X ever discovered by NASA? No, NASA has not discovered planet X. While the scientific hunt for a hypothetical massive outer planet has been ongoing for over several centuries, no observable proof has ever been found. The original concept of Planet X was proposed in the early 1900s to explain perceived wobbles in the orbits of Uranus and Neptune. The search led to the discovery of Pluto in 1930, but Pluto was far too small to account for those gravitational discrepancies. Ultimately, scientists concluded that in the 1990s, that the wobbles were just miscalculations, and Planet X was originally envisioned. The Planet X that was originally envisioned does not exist. So no, there's no NASA proof of a Planet X. The WISE mission in 2014 by NASA scanned the entire sky and found no evidence of Planet X. So no, there's no Planet X. I wanted there to be a Planet X. Don't get me wrong. I was on your side. But my wants doesn't necessarily, I'm not going to go with just because I want something. Oh, we got our first Christian threat. You're going to be gasping when the unproven becomes apparent. But until then, it'll just be myth. Come on, man. Every time the unproven always become proven, and we always find the scientific reason as to why something happened or why something exists or why something acts the way it acts. There is absolutely no proof of the God of the Bible. There's no proof of 99% of the things that are said in the Bible. Oh, good question, Chris. What is your basis for morality and logic outside of the Christian world viewpoint? My basis for morality initially began based on my parents raising me, the community that I lived in, the schools that I went to, the people I gave authority to. Those people based their lifestyle on the laws of the United States. As much as people want to say that they may have based, and I'm sure they supported it with some of the biblical references of don't kill, don't steal, don't, those sorts of things as well. But living in a country of the United States, 99% of your morality is the overwhelming part of your morality is coming from the culture that you live in and the Constitution and the laws of your state and the national laws. Now, as I grew into becoming my own person, I thought about, even though certain things were acceptable under the law or not acceptable under the law, I rationalized what I thought was good. So all morals are subjective. There's no such thing as objective morality. So that's how I developed. Living in Germany changed some of my morality. Having children changed some of my morality. Like I was a male chauvinist in my younger years because my grandfather was a male chauvinist. But having a daughter changed that shit real quick. But all morals are subjective. Even the morals that people who believe in these gods, the moralities of the gods of the Bible is subjective because it only applies to the God of the Bible. Because the morality of the God of the Bible is different from the God of Zoroaster, is different from the God of the Sumerians, the Akkadians, the Babylonians. Is different from those who worship Shamash. Is different from the Hindus. It is different. All those moralities are different. They're all subjective. According to the Hindu god Brahma, the cow is a sacred animal. According to the Bible, the cow is not a sacred animal. So therefore, a cow being sacred is subjective based on which God you believe in and whose morals and the more if you're going to follow that God's morals. So even when you claim that, so when you claim you have the morality of your God, that is subjective in itself. How can you not believe the Bible when it explains the life cycle and how the earth operates? The Bible doesn't explain the life cycle nor how the earth operates. According to the Bible, the sun stood still in the sky, which would indicate that the sun revolves around the earth, not the earth revolving around the sun or the earth having a rotation, right? We have detected inactivity during your live. What the hell? Hold on, TikTok. I guess if I don't press buttons after a certain amount of time, TikTok be want to cut you off. TikTok crazy. But no, the Bible doesn't demonstrate that it understands how science works. It thinks that that the world was flooded and there's enough water, and that there's water above us, and water that the blue that you see above you is water, and that it opens up portals to release that water, and that's what creates rain. No, the Bible doesn't demonstrate the life cycle and how the earth operates. Not at all. Not at all. The Bible says that people are property. That is not how life works. People should never be property. The Bible thought that a bat was a bird. It puts bats in the category of birds. Bats are not birds. Right? So, no. Have you read it completely? I have read the Bible more than 50 times completely. Yes. I mean, you're God, but you think a bat is a bird. You think that rabbits chew the cud, and they don't. Rabbits don't chew cud. They don't chew the cud. Right? So the Bible doesn't demonstrate how the earth works. You know what would happen if the earth rotation just stopped? There'd be tsunamis, volcanic eruptions, earthquakes. The whole planet would be worse than the movie 2012. Yet, in order for Joshua to win this battle, the sun stood still for an extra 12 hours. Doesn't happen. Oh, you probably a flat earther, so I'm going to end that part of the conversation. I don't talk flat earth because that's, to me, is dumber than believing in the Bible. So you said earth don't move. I don't do flat earth. I find that to be one of the most irritating conversations in existence. They would say the earth don't move. Everything revolves around the earth. Yeah. Now that's the thing. If you believe in the Bible, you should be a flat earther. You should believe Job. In the book of Job, he talks about how the earth is fixed on foundations. Oh shit, they just said that. It says the earth is fixed on foundation. No. The earth is not fixed on foundations. But if you believe the Bible, you should be a flat earther. I said that to one of my family members once, and they didn't know what to do it themselves. But nah. And rainbows were around before the flood, the so-called flood. Oh, Renz is a Buddhist ass kisser that fuels his Christian hatred. You'd think he was Muslim or a Satanist. Y'all are so funny. I love when people, because their arguments don't work, because their arguments get cooked every time, they then resort to name calling and disparaging characters. I don't hate Christian. See, that's a stronger hate. I don't hate nobody. I hate raw onions. I hate raw onions. But I do. If I had to say that there was one religion that I wish people would follow more so than Christianity, it wouldn't be Buddhism, though. Oh, you're saying it was a joke? Okay, cool. But I actually like Taoism better than Buddhism. If people had to have a religion, I'd be like Taoism. It's better than Buddhism. It's better than all the other isms. User said, if we were the center of the universe, then we don't move. But we're not the center of the universe. That's the problem. We know that we are on the outer edges of the Milky Way galaxy. And the Milky Way galaxy itself is moving, and we are moving towards the galactic center. Right. So no. And we can see the expansion of our known universe. How does a compass work? It works based on magnetic poles. Based on the magnetic poles of the earth. And so if you want to shoot an azimuth in order to figure out what direction you need to go in order to get somewhere, don't ask me to remember all of it, because I ain't been in the Marine Corps for 30 years. That's the last time I used the compass, was in the Marine Corps. But too many people throughout history have calculated and seen that the earth has the circumference of the earth. We know that the earth is round. The earth, well, not round, but it's a sphere. So I'm not getting into your flat earth bullshit. So no. See, why you trying me, Casey? Casey said, ask flat earthers, if the earth doesn't move, how do we get wind? Because, see, Ra, when Jeb and Newt was embraced, Ra had a daughter named Shu, which is the wind, and she blew real hard to separate them. That's how we get wind. Or that's how you get the wind. Or God breathing. God's, see, the wind is because the God is up there. That's how you get the wind. Oh my gosh. That Joker said, why does cigar smoke go straight up? Actually, cigar smoke doesn't go straight up. Cigar smoke will go up because the smoke is lighter than the air that's around it, but more so because of the pressure of our atmosphere. Cigar smoke will reach a certain height and then it'll hover because of the pressure. If you've ever been to a cigar lounge, you can easily see how the room will fill with cigar smoke. If cigar smoke just went up, then all the cigar smoke would just keep going up and remain up. But the pressure is like the ceiling. That pressure, like the ceiling, keeps it in that area. And then as it accumulates, it becomes denser than the air and starts to condense lower and lower. What that got to do with flat earth bullshit, I don't know. But if you was trying, you probably trying to get rid of gravity. It's probably what you was trying to do. You cannot think of gravity without also including an atmosphere. That's why when them crazy ass people be saying, like, here's a ball and I'm gonna pour some water on it, and you see how the water just falls off. Yeah, you got to have an atmosphere. You got to have an atmosphere. Oh, he said because of no spin. It is so many other scientific things that you guys just don't consider with your thought process, right? You're encased, the earth spins, but you're encased in the atmosphere. So you're moving with the rotation. It's kind of like if you're in a car, you're driving, there's a fly in your car, the windows are up. The fly flies around all in your car, but yet the fly is still moving at the speed of the car. So you're going 90 miles per hour, because I'm here in Texas. So you're going 90 miles per hour down the highway. The fly is in your car, which is its atmosphere, it's the planet Earth, and it's moving at 90 miles per hour as the car is moving at 90 miles per hour. But it still has the ability to move around in the car because it's in an atmosphere. Now, If you do a sudden hard stop, everything in that car pushes forward because it's still moving at that 90 miles per hour, but the hard stop causes it. So they get that, what is that, torque? You know, because you got the, what's it called? Centrifugal? Um, is that what it's called? Now I don't even know if that's the name, right name. Y'all be killing. See, that's why I don't even bother with flat earther. Ain't in no damn dome. But ancient writers did think and did look at the sky and think that it was a dome. That's what they thought. It was a dome. You, for all intents and purposes, you can say that the Earth's atmosphere would be your dome, right? The difference is that we can break through it. According to flat earthers and biblical myth, you cannot break through this so-called dome, but we have proven time and time again that we've broken through our atmosphere. I'm not. You know what? I'm done with this flat earth bullshit. This is why I don't like flat earth. You want to get into a circle debate? You talk to a flat earther. You be going in circles. You be going 90 miles per hour is not legal in Texas, but you don't think it was, but you think it was. Exactly. You would think that 90 miles per hour was legal in Texas because I saw the speed limit was like 65 and this car passed that. The cops going about 85 and the cop just went on about his business. Okay, we're gonna ban this person because if all you can come on here and curse at people, you got to go. We don't do that. You may not respect the people on here whether we agree or disagree, but I'm not gonna let you sit up here and just rant your ignorance. Hopefully, most of y'all didn't even see his comments, but we don't do that on here. I'm going to always protect the people who are on here, no matter if we agree or disagree. So, yeah. I think I meant centripetal force is what I was thinking about. Not centrifugal, centripetal force. But back to the subject matter, because I'm not talking flat earth. We're not doing that. We're not doing that. And because I got to stay focused here, because until I get an air conditioning unit and put it in my garage, that's where I'm at. I'm in my garage. It's hot as fuck in here. We need the phone thing. Sorry if this noise is bothering y'all, but I need more air. I need more air. So, yeah, I didn't mean centrifugal, man. Damn, I said couldn't think of it, but I think I meant centripetal force. Get off my back. Get all the way up off my back on that one, Kevin. So, notice how nobody has come. None of the people who claim that they believe in this Bible, they want to argue flat Earth and shit like that. None of them over there is able to demonstrate, in any sense of the matter, how any of the things of the Bible, any of the historical events of the Bible are actually true. I ain't seen not one person over there prove that the flood happened or that Exodus happened, or you can't even prove that David existed. Right? Not one of them. They run from it. I got to figure out how to get this thing up here. He's getting on my nerves. I'm trying to. This is killing me. that I can't get, that TikTok live is so different from how it's used on your phone. I believe Jesus has brothers and sisters and a father. I don't think Jesus ever existed. Not the biblical Jesus. That dude never existed. I want to get y'all up here. I click on the thing. I'm clicking on it. All viewers can request their way up. It shows that I've clicked on for multiple guests. I've saved it. There he goes. It took forever. I finally figured the dumb thing out on TikTok. Thank you for your patience. It is so irritating. Terminology Jewish didn't exist 2,000 years ago. Damn it, I want to talk about the subject matter. Can we get the subject matter? Can we talk about how none of the Bible history is real? That 99% of it is fake. You got to give the 1%, and that 1% is only certain places, and like the Tower of Babel never happened, right? That Tower of Babel story is based on an unfinished, most likely an unfinished ziggurat that was that the people of the Israelites on the Babylonian captivity saw and utilized that as propaganda, especially once they were released by the Persians. And they saw it as, propaganda helps to uplift people who are going through some bullshit, who are going through some troubled times. Okay. Now, I guess it'll tell me if somebody actually clicks on one of the boxes to come up. I'm guessing that'll happen. Jody girl said, "You claim it, prove it." Okay. Which one would you like for me to prove? Jody girl. Pick one. I'm gonna let you choose, Jody girl, which one I will demonstrate. What situation I will demonstrate is that the Bible claims as a historical event that it never happened. Tower of Babel. Okay. One of the first ways that's easily to prove that the Tower of Babel story never happened is that the Tower of Babel story would have occurred after the flood, right? After the flood, and about 100 years after the flood. So that will put the Tower of Babel in and around 2500, 2400 BCE. Now, what we do know is that prior to 2500 BCE, the Egyptian and the Kemetic people, the Cushite people, already had a different language. We also know that the Canaanites already that the Canaanite cuneiform, as well as not the Canaanite, the Akkadian writing of utilizing cuneiform was the most popular language that was being utilized for business and interstate commerce at that time frame, and governmental and interstate communication between governments, between the Egyptians, the Hittites, the Akkadians, the Sumerians during that time frame. So we know the Egyptian language already existed. We also know that the cuneiform was already being used. We know the Akkadian language was being used, and the Akkadian and Sumerian were a mixed empire, and both of them had their own languages. And from time to time, the dominant language would be based on who was king at the time. So, for instance, when Sargon became the emperor of the Akkadian Empire, the Akkadian language became the primary language that was being utilized. So we know that those two languages existed prior to the Tower of Babel. We also can look and see that the Chinese history was already being written prior to that, and that they already had their own language at the time frame that the Tower of Babel, before the Tower of Babel, and during the Tower of Babel, and after the Tower of Babel. And each one of these languages continued after the Tower of Babel as well. All right. So the reason why I say that proves that the Tower of Babel never happened is because the Bible says that during that time frame, before the tower was destroyed, that the entire world only spoke one language. So the Bible lies. The Bible is wrong. The entire world did not speak one language. You had a Proto-Chinese language being taught. You had been spoken. You had a Kemetic language being spoken, a Kushite language being spoken, a Akkadian language being spoken. You had a Sumerian language being spoken. And I'm just focusing on the area right there. If we go anywhere across to any other lands, we can demonstrate that those people had their languages that were being spoken as well. So the fact that the Bible says that there was one language, no. That already creates a problem with the story, right? Then, according to this story, it is also saying that the only people that were alive were these descendants of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. But we know that in 2500 BCE, that there were people in the Americas, there were people in the South Pacific, there were people in the South Pacific, there were people in Europe, there was people in Asia, there was people in Africa. And I'm talking about beyond just Egypt. I'm talking about real Africa, the whole of Africa, like throughout the entire continent of Africa, that there were already people existing in those societies who had a history of their own. So the entire world population did not come from Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and they did not all live in the same place. They did not all gather together and build a tower. So that shows that the story is also a lie, since those civilizations were already going on before, after, and during this event. So no. What timeline are you? Because China, no, fool. Of course, I said a Proto-Chinese language during that time frame. They weren't calling themselves China. I'm quite sure they weren't calling themselves China during that time frame. I hate when people do that. And I'm gonna say hate strongly. You know that I'm using current terms to describe an area, but yet you want to, the Chinese didn't exist at that. There was no China at that time frame. No, they didn't call themselves Chinese at that time frame. But we're talking about the area, the people in that area. Freaking idiots. Oh no, Miss Missy. Jody Girl says that the separation of the continents coincided with the Tower of Babel. Hence, we are from a similar flood stories all over the world, same building aspect, i.e. pyramids. No. First of all, even though continental drift was considered a pseudoscience in the late 1800s, it was proven later on in the early to mid 1900s that continental drift is a real thing. But the continents only drift about 3 centimeters per year, right? There is absolutely no way the Atlantic Ocean could have been created during that time frame. There's no way that the Himalayas mountains could have been created during that time frame, because the Himalayan mountains, which is one of the youngest mountain ranges on the planet, only started forming when the Indian plate started crashing into the Asian plate, which created the Himalayan mountains out of the ocean. They came up out of the ocean. So continental drift takes millions of years in order for what we see today to be in existence, not 3,000 years, and now you got, or 4,000 years, and you got, you know, the Atlantic Ocean. It cannot and does not happen that way. We have scientific evidence to demonstrate that. Hence why there are similar flood stories. There are similar flood stories around the world. Only on the coastal regions do you have people talking about the ocean flooding. So most flood stories are river floods or lake floods. So the Peruvian flood story is a lake flood. The Mayan flood story is a river flood. The Moccasin Bend flood story is a river flood story. I forgot the name of the tribe up by the Great Lakes, but their story is a lake flood. All right. Every Chinese flood story is a river flood of the Yellow River. These people do not have worldwide flood stories. They're not all over the place like some of y'all want to think that they are because you heard somebody say it, right? And then these flood stories all happen differently, and they were told at different time frames to have happened. The only thing that happened somewhat uniformly was at the end of the Younger Dryas time frame, around 12 to 11,000 years BCE. The ice caps melted rapidly, and 400 feet of seafloor was reclaimed. So only if you was on the coast would you have experienced the Younger Dryas thawing or flood, which that is most likely where most of the flood stories come from. But there's never been a time frame where the entire world flooded. So, and especially not during the Tower of Babel time frame. And even if you had a worldwide flood, it would not create the amount of continental drift that we have today. So if you had that type of continental drift to create the Atlantic Ocean, shorten the Pacific Ocean, create the Indian Ocean, and so on and so forth, that would have erupted every volcano on the planet. So the earth, not only would the heat, and understand what I'm saying, when rain falls, rain as it moves through the atmosphere creates heat. Every drop creates heat. When it hits the ground, it creates heat. When it hits the other water, it creates heat, right? So all these raindrops falling, creating all this heat, that raindrop raining for 40 days and 40 nights in the way that in order to flood the planet would cause the water, all the water on the planet would be boiling, like boiling. And then if you got all the volcanoes erupting, and albeit some of them will be underwater erupting, it would create so much steam and that heat that Noah and everything on the planet would die. Like everything would die. So the Tower of Babel flood story makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And that is not when the continents separated. It's like people want to force humans to have been around during the time frame of Pangea. Humans weren't around during the time frame of Pangea. There were no humans. There was no Homo sapiens or nothing. Has anybody clicked on the box? Because I don't know if it's telling. It doesn't. It's not. Let me see. Do you believe in reincarnation? Nope. What is your idea of heaven? Yesterday, a moment when I was listening to Sarah Vaughan, some other big band jazz artists, Billie Holiday. I had a nice cigar, I had a bourbon, and the birds was singing. It was very peaceful. It was heaven. It was heaven. But I know what you mean. I don't. The biblical heaven is slavery. Heaven don't exist. Heaven is just a state of mind, state of being. You can have heaven every day. Not the flood. You the one who brought up the whole You brought up the flood, chick. You see this is so stupid to me. They bring up the flood, then they're like, not in the flood, fool. Again, you narrate to fit your agenda. I said Tower of Babel. The flood was prior, right? Now, let's go back up. 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 Let's go. Let's see where. Keep going. I keep saying Jimmy and thinking that it's the same person, but it's not. I know it was above that comment. I saw that comment. And we go right here where you said the separation of the continent coincide with the Tower of Babel. Hence why there are similar flood stories still all over the world. So I didn't bring up the flood. You brought up the flood. And the building of pyramids is simply because a pyramid is the simplest and most sturdy form of construction prior to having modern day techniques of building things like cement and steel girders and things of that nature. So you brought up the flood, fool, since you want to call me a fool. So don't get mad when I show you that you're the one who brought up the damn flood. And the flood was 100 years or so prior to the Tower of Babel. And then they're trying to say, well, I didn't say that continents happened because of the flood. Then why the hell you bring up the flood? And how are you saying that the continents separated? Are you saying continental drift happened that God just moved all the damn continents immediately? You see how their logic works? First, they bring up the flood and they say that's when the continents separated. Then they want to claim that they said nothing about a flood and that the continents and they weren't talking about the continents separating. All right. And no, did you explicitly say that the continents happened because of the flood? You did not. But you did bring it up in conjunction with the flood, which would indicate through critical thinking that you are insinuating that that's what happened. Because if you were saying that the continents separated simply because of the Tower of Babel, you would not have brought up the flood, but you brought it up. Oh my God. No, they're saying that. Hold on. This is how you're sounding to me now, Jody girl. I said the separation of the continents coincided with the Tower of Babel. Happened by the power of God. That's how it happened, by the power of God. And that's how the continents separated. God just said, who separate continents? And all the continents just separated. And all the people was where they was at and everything. The power of God, God of the gaps, always works well for him. God of the gaps. The continents just separate, even though we scientifically can demonstrate continental drift. We know that continental drift happens, and we know it takes millions of years for us to be in the position where the continents are where they are today. But Jody's girl is saying that no, it was the power of God. The power of God just separated the continents, right? And he must have just picked them all up and moved them over, set them down. Because if he made them move like continental drift happened, then there would have been so many earthquakes and not hurricanes, but earthquakes and tsunamis would have been happening, and all that kind of stuff would have happened because it was the power of God, and he didn't worry about the other places because the only people was Noah, his wife, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and their wives. And then they had all the people because they built the city, even though there couldn't have been no more than 300 people on the planet at that time frame. If I go with that story, he built a whole city, and he went and built other cities too. Nimrod, that dude, he built those cities, and then they tried to build the Tower of Babel. And God said, y'all, if I let them do that, they can do anything. So I got to separate their language. Oh, oh, oh my gosh. It's hot in this joint. It's hot. I gotta let some air in here. I gotta raise the garage for a second. Oh my goodness. Mm-mm-mm. Jody said the Earth was made 11,013 BCE. How the hell they claim that the Earth was made in 11,000 BCE? Yes, you know what's interesting? That's right around the Younger Dryas flood, when coastal civilizations would have been destroyed because of a rapid increase in sea levels up to 400 feet, not 400 feet high, but 400 feet going that way, like of sea level taking over land. So, like at 400 feet of sea level raised today, Florida would be underwater. That's why I think, what do you call it? Underwater archaeology is very important. Oh my goodness. So the Earth, based on the scientific knowledge that we have right now, that we is estimated that the Earth was formed about 3 billion years ago, 3 or 4 billion years ago. The Earth was not, and then it went through processes of being hot, molten, being hot, unsuitable for what we call life. And then as the Earth cooled down and was in a habitable zone, and other elements from asteroids and comets crashed into the Earth, all the combinations that, hydrogen combining and creating nitrogen, and then more and more creations of atomic structures, and then eventually more dense molecular structures are created, and then which all of this takes billions and billions of years for it to happen, well, millions of years for it to happen, but over the course of 4 billion years we get to where we are now. We have more data to support that than we have good. Okay. Jody is just a Bible believer, and they believe anything in the Bible. So I guess, according to Jody, even though there's we know who built the temples in Egypt in and around the time frame that Moses was supposedly during the Exodus, and during the time frame that the Israelites were in Egypt. We can see that the Egyptians said that no, we paid people to build these monuments and temples and whatnot. And so, yeah, there was no slave. We didn't have all these Semitic slaves in here of ranging around 2 million. And there was no time that we experienced a economic disaster, which these plagues would have created. Do you realize that if the Exodus had happened, that with all the 10 plagues, that it would have wrecked the Mediterranean economy to the point where other countries would have been like, damn, Egypt now got all jacked up. So now the economic structure of the Mediterranean world is all going through a depression. It would have been worse than the Great Depression that happened. That if Egypt had, the river had turned to blood, the frogs, the flies, all the livestock in Egypt dead, all the wheat and other farm agricultural things in Egypt were destroyed. That at that time frame, whereas Egypt had an empire that went all the way up through the Levant, at this time frame of the so-called Noah story, Egypt controlled the Levant all the way up until it bordered to Turkey, where the Hittites were. So Egypt, were the Hittites or Assyrians? Assyria, I think it was still the Hittites, and the Assyrians were getting bigger. But they would have controlled all of that. They controlled all of that. And yet, if that had happened, the Hittites would have felt the economic blow. The other Mesopotamian cultures would have felt the economic blow. The people in Greece would have felt the people in Croton and those islands, Minoans and all of them would have felt the economic blow. All those people would have a story about how the economic blow of disaster happened. Just like when the Bronze Age collapse happened, all the people of the Mediterranean write about the Bronze Age collapse because it economically and socially affected all of those people. So if that had happened to the Egyptian empire, then all those people would have been affected as well. But yet we see through archaeological evidence that Egypt prospered during the time frame of the so-called Exodus, that Egypt was doing big things during that time frame. Oh, I know I can move that. So there again, your little stories have no proof. And there's actually proof that says no, that could not have happened, because if it did, this is what the outcome would have been. Also, that could not have happened because Egypt thrived during that time frame. You cannot thrive. Just get one. Let's just get one. One plague, the last plague, the 10th plague. If every firstborn in the United States died right now, the devastation that would cause to this country, with all our systems in place and everything, it would still be so devastating to this country that America would go through at minimum a deep recession. Now, if you add that all the livestock died, all the agriculture dies in America right now, what would happen to America? What would happen in the world? What would happen in the world? I really want to know what you guys think would happen in the world, because that's what they're claiming that happened in Egypt. Would the world be affected? I really want to know. I really want to see you guys' response to that, because I know I'm not the only one who understands national or world economics. Right, depression would affect the world. Exactly. Cause I know I'm a little bit crazy, but I ain't ignorant, and I do know how to think critically. Well, to reason properly, there is no comparison between connectivity of today and then. There is a comparison. I understand what you're saying, Jim. Is there a worldwide comparison to the connectivity? No. But during that time, so the time frame of the Exodus would have been biblically, on one hand, biblically, around 1500 BCE. On another hand, biblically, it would be around 1200 BCE. So in that 1200 to 1500 BCE time frame, the Mediterranean world had connectivity. So, Jim, what would have happened to the Mediterranean world during that time frame? Because that's the comparison. See, today we can compare the whole world. Back then, their whole world was the Mediterranean for the most part. That was the lifeblood. So from 1500 BCE to 1200 BCE, they were trading the coastal, all those coastal areas around the Mediterranean were trading with one another. So come on, Jim. Well, I got not Jimmy. Come on, Jim Cab. The Mediterranean world. They trading with each other. They communicating with each other. They going down to Egypt to get wheat and grain. They trading. Egypt got cows and stuff. And just nationally in Egypt. Yet Egypt thrived. And I think that's the 18th dynasty. Egypt was thriving during that time frame. We see major construction projects happening in 1200 BCE. We see them conquering new lands, having puppet regimes during those times. There is absolutely, they would have been able to their impact at that time. It would have been bad for sure, but now we're near as bad as if the same or similar happening within the US. Nah, bro. We're not now. I know people in their time frame always think that it's the worst. If you can find anybody who was around during the Great Depression, I'm guarantee you to tell you that things were worse during the Great Depression than they are now. All right. We don't have bread lines. We don't have soup lines today. So 18th through 19th dynasty. Appreciate it, Rupert. We don't have bread lines and soup lines like they did during the Great Depression. So saying that things are as bad now as they were back then, no. Literally, those in place would have been catastrophic to the Egyptian. The Egyptian empire would have fallen. They would not have been able to hold an army. Nothing. It would have been totally destroyed. Right. Jimmy said exactly. Thank you. This generation wouldn't last one day in the 1930s. Most wouldn't. They're too soft. Missed my point on very simple use. Dude, you said it would have been bad for sure, but now we're near as bad as if the same or similar happening with the US in 2026. Dude, we're nowhere. You said near as bad. We are nowhere near as bad as what that type of event would have created. Nowhere near. So when did the empire actually go down? Because this was thousands of years before Yeshua. You talking about the Egyptian empire? So the Egyptian empire pretty much crashed and burned because of the Bronze Age collapse was the initial thing that crashed it. So in and around 1100 to 1000 BCE is when the Egyptian empire crashed as far as its holdings outside of the Sinai Peninsula. It still maintained Sinai Peninsula and along the Nile River. It didn't. Now that portion of the Egyptian empire didn't crash until the Assyrians came in and they conquered it for a little while, but then the Egyptians came back and reclaimed it. The Assyrians came in around 700 in the 700s, late 700s, around 722. The Assyrians came in and conquered Egypt, and then Egypt regained itself when the Assyrians lost Babylonians in the 500s, and then Egypt was just like his own little country, that's main borders until the Greeks came in the 200s, and then 300 Greeks came in. When the Greeks conquered the Persians, that's when they took Egypt. You act on surrounding nations. And tremendous because a lot of those surrounding nations depended on Egypt for its grain, right? Grain was a major moneymaker for Egypt. And if all the grain had been destroyed, then a lot of those countries would have went through famines. I mean, this is why when the Bible talks about famines happening in the Middle East, everybody always running to Egypt. You know, the Nile River basin provided, you know, an agricultural stronghold for people. So a lot of if Egypt had lost all its grain, then famines would have been happening all through a large portion of the Mediterranean, and we just don't see that. And see, if we saw that, then you would have a leg to stand on to say that that would give you at least something to say that possibly the exodus happened, because look at what happened in that Mediterranean world. You know, the breadbasket of the Mediterranean went away, and only those who provided their own, you know, enough grain for themselves survived. And Egypt itself would have been easy pickings. Neighboring empires would have saw Egypt go down and been like, "Oh, we finna go get them fools." You know, the Hittites or the Assyrians, well, it wouldn't. The Hittites would have been like, "Oh, we finna go whoop their ass." But it wasn't until the Bronze Age collapsed that the Sea People, I think, which are the Phoenicians, were able to actually defeat Egypt, and that released the Levantian area and some of Mesopotamia out of Egypt's control. And then you pretty much from around 1100 to what, about 800, you had people, different little warlord nations popping up. My point is simple. You can't compare national dependency on the US today with that of Egypt, damn near 3,000 years ago. Very simple point. Very simply, you can compare national dependence on the USA to nearly 3,000 years ago. If the United States were to go through a depression right now, there are certain countries and many countries that will go through a depression as well, in the same way that the Mediterranean world would have. Just if it's just nationally, just look at America. If all that shit happened to America, America itself would go through an economic and social upheaval, just like they would have back then. It is not that hard. You just want to be contrary. Yeah, where you guys get your name from. Moses is, you know, Moshe, Abraham. Okay, I understand what you're saying, Jimmy. But here's the thing, Jimmy. I'm American and I speak American. And when I speak American English. And in American English, his name is Moses. If I was speaking with a Hebrew tongue, then I call him Moshe. Or if I was speaking Muslim, I don't know which one that is. I don't know that Muslim or that Hebrew. Now in America, his name is Abraham, not Ibrahim. And Joseph, which I don't speak that Hebrew, so it ain't Joseph. So just because I use an American name doesn't mean I'm talking about a different person. It's kind of like if I said that Osiris, I'm using the Greek name, which we utilize in American English. And that don't make Osiris any different from Asar. Asar, Aset, and Heru, they all the same. So pulling on little points like that really don't make a difference. It's a point of correction that's unnecessary, because we know who we're talking about. It's kind of like earlier when my man was saying that there was no China back then, and I was talking about the landmass of the area and what would become the Chinese people. Wasn't saying the Chinese people were around back then. Yes, I know. Those names changed because America was founded by colonials from them European countries. Or should I say the British people? They came here, and what they did is, you know, they changed the language of the people who were living in America. You know, the native people have never heard of none of those Hebrew counterparts, and so they would have never known them. And they would have never even told stories about anyone named Ibrahim or Abraham. But because the Bible went through translation after translation, and then finally with the King James version of the Bible, well, actually it started with the Tyndale version of the Bible, but then King James, and then the what they call the Age of Discovery, we now get into the English language. And since the Northern American continent was primarily colonized by those who were speaking of the English language, it has become the more common tongue to use here in America. And so therefore, when I say I speak American, is what I'm showing is a difference between English and the Americans. But of course, Americans speak a different type of English than the British. Y'all know I must be speaking. The heat is making me delirious. If we got to feel like a 90 something degrees here in San Antonio today. Go Spurs, go. Yeah, I really don't utilize the Hebrew names because most people wouldn't know what the hell I'm talking about. So why bother? Why bother? So, you know, it's one, and it's a lesser point. It's not even a major point. We know the Bible went through many translations. Is the New Testament, the Old Testament written, you know, in different forms of Hebrew over something me and Jim can agree on. Go Spurs, go. Nah, Jim is all right. Yeah, as much as we talk, I do like Jim. You know, I can have a conversation and a cigar and a drink with Jim. But the Hebrew, you know, the Old Testament went through different forms of Hebrew over the years, over its centuries. And then finally into the, you know, that Masoretic text. And the New Testament was written in Koine Greek. The Koine Greek was then translated into Latin. Those versions were first, I think the first translation was in German, which is not even the same German as they speak today. And then, of course, Tyndale created his version in English. And then I just did a video about that by King James, with talking about the Hebrew Israelite people. And then until we get our American versions. God damn, Jimmy, your name is, I wish I could hear you say that. His name is spelled Xyozaso. That's a hell of a name. So we're going to call you Joe. Mm-hmm. 106 in Vegas. 109 on 30. My bad, boss lady. You win. You win the temperature battle. Because god damn. Damn. That's hot. The only thing that's bothering me is we having humidity here because it keep on raining. Usually it's dry heat. Now I can deal with the dry heat. What time is it? Oh, we are approaching 3:30. And I got to go to the gym because I got to get my back fat off. It's time to go to the gym. Oh, trust me, Kevin, I got some watermelon, and it's this thing that I've never heard of until I got here to Texas. It's called Dream Melon. It's like a mini cantaloupe. It's like a little cantaloupe, about that big, right? About that big, called a Dream Melon. It is much better than cantaloupe. It looked like cantaloupe, but that shit is not cantaloupe. It's got this sweetness to it. It is good. This Dream Melon, and it only comes out so many times. So it's in season now. So I don't know if y'all have access to Dream Melon, but that damn Dream Melon is good. I don't even know if it's real. Might be some genetically created shit for all I know. I don't trust the translation from Hebrew to English. I always ask a rabbi. Well, it depends on who did the translation. So I always go back through and look at who did the translation and what did they utilize for their translations. I wouldn't just say all English translations are incorrect. Anything translated from the King James, which was translated from the Bishop Bible, which was translated from the Great Bible, which was translated from the Matthew Bible, which was translated from the Coverdale Bible, which was translated from the Tyndale Bible. Yeah, you got a whole lot of problems. Dream Melon is like a cantaloupe and a honeydew got together and had a baby. That's what a Dream Melon is like. But it's better than honeydew. And exactly, Jim Cab. Rabbis are going to have their biases because they want these stories to be true as well. They want these stories to be true. But that's going to do it for today, guys. I like I said, I got to go to the gym. Got to get the back fat off. Yes, you can get it at Heb or HEB as y'all like to call it here in Texas. You can go to Heb. Actually, that's the only place I've ever seen it is at Heb. Mainly because other than Walmart, the only goddamn grocery stores they got around here is Heb. Which I ain't complaining because HEB is the shit. I talked trash about HEB when I first got to San Antonio. But HEB, they didn't, HEB the shit. And real quick, Magdalene Munoz, where you at? Oh, no, you're not the one who asked me that, did you? Is she? Who asked me that question about Heb? Oh, that was you, Magdalene. No, I don't want my story to be true. Actually, it's not like that. Oh, you're in San Antonio? Cool. Cool. I've met quite a few people. There's a few people I've met on here who are in San Antonio. I was surprised. I didn't figure there'd be, San Antonio is seriously a religious area, hugely religious. So I haven't met many San Antonians. I was surprised at how many people are on here from San Antonio. Cool. I'm up here on the north side in the Chavano Park area. But somebody said something. No, see, here's the thing. My research is always like more scientific. I don't look to find if the information that I already think is true. I just look for whatever the information lands. So once I've established that this is the correct information, then yes, I'm going to push that information out. But that's where I go. Oh, Leon Valley. I would say why I was over in Leon Valley last week, but there's something that me and my wife are doing that I'm not ready to say. But yeah, I know Leon Valley. Well, I love it. Look, Magdalena was probably out honking last night. This is the weirdest thing they do here. Let me close this. It's starting to get hot. So San Antonio won against New York last night. And I bet you Magdalena was down there on Southwest Military honking her honking. They go honking here, which means that when San Antonio Spurs win, they all get in their cars and they drive around the city blowing their horns. It was the weirdest damn thing. It caught me off guard last night. Like, what are they doing? Why are they riding around blowing their horns? And Southwest Military was a freaking parking lot. People barely moving, blowing their horn. There was a guy on a golf cart on Southwest Military last night honking. I was like, this is crazy. But I hope to see you. It would be great to see you around too. Me and my wife, we go downtown a lot. We go out to Cigar International quite often. That sort of thing. I know, boss lady, you need to move back to San Antonio. Come on back to San Antonio. Ain't nothing for you in Vegas. Come on back to San Antonio. Come on back. Oh, she stayed home. I kept hearing. Oh, the reason why you kept hearing booms, Magdalena, is because them fools was out there shooting fireworks last night. Down there in that Leon Valley and what is it called? Alamo Heights and down there on Southwest Military. They were shooting fireworks last night because San Antonio won that game. Now, I hope that they win the series, but it's one game. But they were tripping. These folks up here, they support them damn Spurs. Go Spurs, go. Spurs is my second team. The Atlanta Hawks will always be my first team. Spurs they've been my second team since the Admiral came and played here because I was a fan of the Admiral. So, but anyway, for real. See, you hate it in Vegas. You might as well move down here. Then you can come down here with me. I'm here. Magdalena's here. Isaac is here. It's some more people who are here. Every time I go to Cigar International, well, not every time, but quite a few times when I go to Cigar International, I run into somebody else who's here. There's a guy named Ray who follows the channel. He's here. There's at least about 10 people who go to Cigar International who are here. So come on out. Come on to San Antonio. Bring it. Come down here. But hey, I hope to be on tomorrow. Like I said, I got to do one more live with this version, and I think I got TikTok kind of down. I should be able to get the invite thing up easier. I'm mad that all y'all didn't come, where y'all at. But I look forward to our conversations. I'm seriously considering. Yeah, come on. You want to move down here. You know you want to move down here. You know you want to come back home. So I will see you guys tomorrow, hopefully. And then after that, I'm gonna have to. We'll probably do some more lives. I got to set an appointment with my IT guy to finish setting up the OBS, and then the lives are gonna be great. But I got to get an air conditioner for this garage because if it's this hot right now, it's gonna be, and excuse me if this sounds insulting, but it's gonna be swamp ass hot in this garage because that's what I'm using. This is garage. Later on, like late as the months keep going by. So y'all just pray to the spaghetti monster that I can find an air conditioning unit that doesn't cost $300-400 damn dollars because I'm not paying that much. But I did find a couple of them that are $100-something. But we got something. I'm doing something right now, so I'm not spending any frivolous cash on nothing right now. So anyway, y'all have a great day. You know what? We might go down the City Walk tonight and just walk around, walk City Walk, the Riverside River Walk. Wait, River Walk. We might do that tonight. My daughter just moved here, and we haven't taken her to River Walk yet. Might go do that tonight. So y'all have a great day. And always remember, you got to free yourself to be yourself because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibrations. And there is no way in hell I would ever live in Boston. And we are done.